Namaste and in la catch, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and as always, please like, subscribe, share profusely because it helps us all out. Thanks so much in advance. And also, if you would like to visit planetarycitizens.net, it is an interesting experiment in how to learn to get along so that we can operate on this planet as a united family. And to that end, you'll be able to download my free book there, and hopefully, there we go. It's called Planetary Citizens Awakening the Heart of Humanity, and it's a free download. So I appreciate it if you can do that too. Now, this week's guest is Dr. Suzanne Harper. She is a Feng Shui consultant in her, she helps people relocate and quickly, and also sets up the situations and the arrangements energetically for that to happen. She's an interesting woman. You're going to find her immensely insightful. And this apocalyptic chat may be one of your favorites. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Well, Suzanne, I am so glad we've had this opportunity to get together and converse about what goes on inside and outside. As you know, our apocalyptic chats are about bridging inner and outer worlds. We have both, and we're often bereft of talking about the inner because we think we'll appear crazy or some such thing to others. And for those who don't have a direct experience of that, that may be so. So with that, um, I know that you've had to have a rich background because you are highly sensitive. How did you first become aware of this interconnectedness in a world bigger than what many perceive?
Thank you for asking, Zan, and thank you for having me on this.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you. Um, for me, it was a case of being born with abilities that I had to find out how to deal with. Um, I'm AB rhesus negative blood group, which is quite rare, and
Hmm.
it means that I'm hardwired. What I didn't realize until later on, when I trained as a medium, that it is medium's blood group. So I come from a family where this blood group is found a lot in the Basque region of Spain. It's one of the highest frequencies, and my mother's ancestry is
Hmm.
Basque, and she basically had the same blood group. She was clairaudient. I'm clairsentient. I have flashes of clairvoyance. And I found as a child, my mother certainly wouldn't have said that she was clairaudient at all. And fair enough. My father was the son of a
Now,
seventh
for our
son.
audience, what that means is you hear things
Here,
others don't.
yes. And this is something people are often very quiet about because they're worried when people talk about hearing voices that you'll be labeled as crazy.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, the white coats come.
yes. So this is something a lot of people keep, kind of very quiet. Um, you do get still the still silent voice, which does guide you. I was always aware of other energies around me as a child growing up, and it wasn't until I had a rather frightening experience, age 9, that I realised I needed to find out more about all of this world and to start to read about it and to understand it, because I think knowledge is power, and if you're afraid of
Mhm.
something, you have to find out
Right. If fear is the door, right?
fear
You
is
need
the
to
door.
explore. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what basically happened with me was we were living in London at the time, and our house was built over a plague pit. Now, there was a plague in London after the Great Fire of London, and
Hmm.
I found out afterwards our house was literally built over one of the burial places. So my experience probably wasn't too surprising, but I felt the weight of something literally on my chest, and I just kind of,
Right. For that
what is
kind
it?
of, because that's if you want to see it as a vibrational, because things remain, right? Whatever happens in an area, that vibration is going to continue to be there no matter what. And being super sensitive to it, man, that must have been excruciating.
It was kind of weird. So I was very motivated to find out more about what was going on. And
Hmm.
the best the best information I got was when, and this was something I didn't actually seek out. A boyfriend of mine was going to a teaching medium, and she was training both of us. And I was very, very reassured to find when I saw she was a direct voice medium. So she was
Hmm.
literally taken over, as it were.
Right. We call
The
those
thing,
trance channelers over here, I think, or something like full body trance channelers.
okay. So the thing that was great about her was that she was very, very clear that we have control as human beings. She said, I do not allow my guides to throw me around the room. I set the parameters before the session. I will not give people information about death. She said, there are things I won't do. And I'm very clear. I
Right.
set the boundaries up.
And an
And
interesting thing is those boundaries are respected.
they are. They are. And the other thing that I was very comforted to find was that there are rules on the other side, just like there are rules here. There are the psychic police on the other side. You can actually call them. If you actually are really scared and you're around something that is frightening you and you can't explain, you can certainly call on one of the masters, but you can certainly visualize a cobalt blue cross on a white background, and that is literally calling the psychic police.
Wow. Now, I'm familiar with another method in the violet flame.
Yes,
Um, and yeah, I learned about that in my early 30s, I think. But those are things that you can visualize basically as methods of protection,
yes,
if you feel like you need it.
yes. If
Now,
you,
is it also, to your understanding, that when you are able to be in that place of complete fearlessness, that there is no need for protection because you can't be accosted when you're in that space? That vibrationally it just can't happen. Is that true?
no, because if you are a light worker, by virtue of who you will unfortunately attract the dark. You are a target. However, having said that, if you are very clear about what you're dealing with and you know what you can do, I mean, for example, I do clearings, I don't do them. I work with an angelic team who does them and I ask for their help. I've been
Hmm.
in situations where I have been confronted with pure evil. The person in front of me has been taken over. And I wasn't actually frightened because I knew there was nothing I could do. So I
Right.
just, this is beyond me. Come on, give me a hand here. And the master I called on was Jesus. And suddenly it vanished. But
Right.
you could say it was frightening, but I actually didn't have time to be frightened, and I recognized it for what it was.
Sure.
And
And
if
you shifted your perspective, which changed your vibratory level.
yeah, I went, this is not for me to deal with. No
Right.
way. You
Now,
know,
as a kid, when you were learning all of this, and I'm guessing that it began in before you were 10, and
yes.
it continued through your teenage years. As you were developing this and your understanding of it, what was that like? What kind of help did you get, if any, And how did you learn to navigate through that? Because most of our listening audience is between 24 and 44 right now. So I'm sure that they're having some experiences that they're wondering how to navigate.
I think the thing that was useful for me was that although my parents never talked about these things, knowledge was prized in the household I grew up in. I
Hmm.
was very, very fortunate in that respect. And there were always a lot of books around. And if there was something I wanted to read or to find, then it was very accessible. And in a lot of my teenage years, I was in London, and there's the Theosophical Society there, which has
Hmm.
the most amazing library. Um, there are all sorts of libraries of psychic groups where they've got information. Some of it's a lot of it's book learning, but that was what really was accessible to me. So I started reading, and when you realize that other people have experienced these things, you're not on your own. It's completely different.
Yeah,
You go, okay, this is not unusual, but I didn't have other people I could talk to about this. So in those years, my information came from books. It wasn't until later on that I
sure.
started connecting with other people who were into all of these things.
I had a similar experience, and mine was a little less fortunate. I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I tried talking to people and ended up in an institution at 19.
Oh,
Um,
no.
and diagnosed through the DSM-4 at the time, right? Which was their way, the clinician way of doing things. And I just wanted to have somebody to talk to so I could work my own stuff out. Well, they don't listen from that place. They listen from the
No.
place of, oh, there's something wrong with you and we're going to treat you. Unfortunately, I had a psychiatrist prior to that, a year before, just after the experience I had, and he acknowledged that I'd had a spiritual awakening and advised that I keep my mouth shut because most people don't go through it till the mid 40s if they ever do. And I was 18 at the time. So, I can totally relate to, and books really saved me. The Vedas, for instance, really made clear to me, corroborated my experience to the point where I was, okay, this is real. Even though others may not understand it or have a direct experience of it to understand it, at least I know it's real. And that was a huge difference.
Yes, and it enables you to sort of fit in. I mean,
Hmm.
fortunately, I mean, I feel I'm kind of in, if you like, you probably feel the same thing. I'm living in two worlds because there are some people I can talk to about
The
these
inner and the
things. Well,
outer, right?
yeah, well, they have spiritual experiences and I
Sure.
can share things with them, and others for whom it's like a no-go area. It's totally outside anything that,
Oh, yeah. And they just think it's balderdash, right?
yeah, yeah. So I just go, okay, well, I won't talk about it in that particular
Right.
setting. But
Right. And therein is the discernment, right? And as kids growing up, even through mid 20s, even early 30s, we don't know how to filter.
yeah, and I think sometimes it's important that you know that you do.
Yeah,
There are
saves a
people.
lot of grief, I'll say
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it does. So I had to learn that. I learned that very, very early on. And I just, I found out, I was quite surprised to find out later on in my life that my brother had, I think he had some childhood illness. I think it might have been chickenpox or something. And he had a raging fever. And subsequently, he's always been interested in history. And he was seeing battlefields playing playing out on the floor when he looked down. He saw these whole sort of battles
Wow.
taking place, and obviously there was some
Well,
shift in the
yeah, he
veil.
found the liminal space, I think is what that's
Yeah,
called, right?
yeah,
Where, it was almost in a hypnagogic state with the high fever and whatever critical memory he needed to experience as a child to remember, perhaps. I look at these things and I think, okay, so I always ask the question, so why did this happen? Right? What was this about? What did it mean? What's in it for understanding, whether it's for myself, others, or a collective, right? There's always something of value there.
I think the thing is that I find interesting is that my brother's situation was interesting in that he chose to go into the army, and it was a choice. It wasn't anything that was forced on him. It was a
Hmm.
choice. He's always been interested in history, and he's actually very knowledgeable
Right.
and knowledgeable about probably knowledgeable about battles, which my father also was. My
Sure.
father was in the Navy. He was very interested in military history. So there was that going on
Yeah.
somewhere.
Conversely, theirs was choice, right? That they could make. You're hardwired. Now, you can still make choices to ignore it. You're still hardwired.
If you're hardwired, it's very difficult to ignore
Yeah.
because you will be confronted with it, and there isn't a lot that you know,
No.
you
Now,
can
how did you? I love the term acquiesce, right? That's how I got comfortable with some of the things that I've had to go through because you can't resist them. You can, but it's just going to continue. So the optimal choice then would be to acquiesce to flow, which is stepping into whatever your design is and trying to figure that out to a better, to understand it more and be available to it.
I've found again, I suppose because of what I was into,
Hmm.
when I was I think I was about, how old was I at the time? It might have been I was about 20, maybe a little bit more. I went to a medium and, asked the question. I wasn't sure about what I wanted to study or what I wanted to go into. And I was
Sure.
torn between whether I wanted to follow a musical route, become a singer, or whether I would go into some form of medicine. I was thinking about osteopathy and acupuncture at the time. And it was like the two choices were like this. And I really didn't know where I was going to go. So I thought, well, most people would go to careers counseling, and I did do that, but that didn't leave me any the wiser. So I went to a medium. And what the medium said was interesting. The medium said, this lifetime is like, she said, think of it as two books, volume one and volume two. You're in volume two. You've been a healer before. This is your second lifetime doing this. This is what you're meant to do. And as soon as I made that decision, everything else went went smoothly because
Right. And
everything I
so
was,
from that point, you went into the naturopathy, osteopathy,
yeah,
and acupuncture, and you became not just an emotional healer, but a physical one as well.
yeah. So it was guided, and I didn't actually particularly choose to do acupuncture. I mean, this was the other thing that was, I was sitting next to in my class. One of the guys there kept saying to me, he goes, "They're giving scholarships for acupuncture. You should apply." So I hear it once. When you've been at college 4 years, what you want to do is close the books, get out and do stuff, right? What you want to do is go out there and be a
Yeah, I
doer.
didn't do that. I went through an MBA and then got the secondary teaching cert right
Right, so
afterwards.
you got more into it. But I just went, I've had enough of books. I think I kind of want to do the practice. And he kept on at me. He'd go, they're offering scholarships. You should go. You should go. I thought, all right, I'll put on a suit. I'll go and do interview practice, right? So I did get at least as far as the interview. So I turn up. I looked at the other candidates in the room and I thought, there is no way on God's earth I'm getting this. So I
The,
wasn't nervous at all. I just went, well, whatever. And I got it. And the thing that was interesting about this was I got pregnant halfway through the course. And my thinking was, if I stop this course now, they will never give the scholarship to another married woman. I absolutely must finish this. This is absolutely. important that it happens. So I wound up doing acupuncture, and that took me off on a whole other journey into, I suppose it's Chinese philosophy, Taoism. I did Ki Aikido for years.
Sure. Well, in acupuncture, really, you're dealing with energy, and you're either unblocking it or adding to, in order to adjust the body so that it's more highly functional.
Yeah. And the thing that's so interesting is, again, I didn't realize it at the time, but the rules of acupuncture and the rules of Feng Shui are the same.
Hmm.
It's just they're applied differently.
Well, yeah, one's to a body and one's
One,
internally and one's externally.
one is externally.
Right.
So yeah, so it was quite interesting, but that was something really that if I hadn't if I hadn't had a push to do that, I wouldn't have done it. I got the push, and then I thought I found myself in a situation where I thought, well, I must actually do this rather than just
Right.
quit.
Now,
This is
so that speaks to breadcrumbs, serendipitous synchronicities, and interactions as a result. So these are things that you had nudges toward this that you actually said, okay, I'm paying attention. Yeah, that sounds good. I'll try it. Right.
yeah,
Rather than, oh, that sounds like hooey, which a lot do. Right. We get these indicators and these breadcrumbs, if you will, and they come from all kinds of different sources. Um, and yet they come and we're just unaware of when they come and how it happens. And that reminds me of, in my college days when I had that experience, I came back and I understood that I gave my life up to know cosmic consciousness, basically, and did. I went into light beyond, came back with the awareness that we're all cosmic consciousness condensed into form, just unaware, because we don't pursue the discipline to become aware.
yeah, and it is quite a. I mean, you had a really powerful awakening. I mean, there would be no going back on that one.
Uh-uh. You know,
Absolutely,
and I
absolutely
trust me, I've
none.
had a few cosmic two befores. I've tried to say, wait a minute, this, and it's like, no, doesn't work. There's always readjustments and realignments, and until you get that you need to just acquiesce because you're designed for it.
Great. And you did, which is brilliant.
Eh, some might say so. Others might say, man, you've taken one, crazy chance at life, and I did. Why not? Life is, to me, is much more, we are much more than what we believe ourselves to be. And there's a history of documentation of it if we would just turn and look. For instance, like the Vedas, explaining my experience, that we're all divine threads, incarnate, connected to source, capable of God consciousness. Well, what's that mean? It means we're able to tap into infinite intelligence for our individual self and operate in a space of oneness, which is what energy, creation, God, right? It's neutral until you put your attention, intention, and interaction toward it.
And amazing things are possible. That's
Hmm.
the other thing. Amazing things are possible, especially if you get a group dynamic going
Oh,
and
absolutely.
people really want to make change, want things to be different. And one of the really interesting speakers you may have heard of, he's American, is John DeMartini. Have you ever
Yes.
come across him?
Yes, I'm familiar with him.
Yeah, and
He's
he
been
has
around for a while. He's
he's
like
been
20
around for a
years or
while.
30 years, something like that.
Yeah, and he has some great stories about hanging out in Africa, and he's with people in villages where they're very poor, and
Hmm.
he's basically saying, well, no, I'm not some condescending Westerner. I'm
No,
just going
but they
to
didn't know they were poor, right? That's the thing. That was their lives. They had no, they were happy.
yes,
Yes, there was struggle. However, it was life.
yeah, and he said, I was proudly shown by this one young man who had managed to get a heart with an electric light, which was a big deal.
Sure.
You know, that was one of the big deals, and he was planning to do more and acquire more things to make life better and things going on and this, that, and the other. So, you know, it's just he has a very interesting take on things as well. You know,
Sure.
it's also one of total responsibility, you know, that you basically say, well, I'm responsible for everything that is going on in my life, which is quite a lot to actually.
That's the God consciousness I just mentioned, right? Whether we recognize it or not, we make the choices as to what our reality demonstrates to us. Whether they're unconscious or conscious is is of no matter. You know, like Jung said, right? It's our objective to make the unconscious conscious, and that's how we grow.
Yeah, and it's quite a big deal to actually do that.
Right.
Um,
It's a
I
it's
know.
a it's a real discipline that, and I don't want to besmirch humanity or besmirch humanity, but most people want to be told what to do so that they don't have to think.
I think there are some people who would like an easy life and hope that it would go like that, but I'm not sure it always works out the way that
Well,
way.
it hasn't. You know, we had just look what happened with COVID. You know, on one hand, it was devastating to some, where the information of how it happened or why, you know, who, it doesn't really matter. However, it was a clarion call for people to, they were forced into self-obsession on hygiene, right? And then the sequestration allowed the opportunity for self-examination. And that happened globally. Some took it, some didn't. You see the virtual groups that popped up shortly after and during COVID, actually, that demonstrated that, yeah, okay, people were self-examining and they were beginning to look for others like them that could try to figure out, okay, what's our next steps? How do we change what's happening? Because it doesn't feel right and there's something more available. And, you know, with what I'm doing with planetary citizens, it began in the 70s, you know, this concept of having a borderless world, right? We live on one planet. We're one family. We haven't recognized that. And then we're still fighting over territory and resources. It just seems insane. And yet we continue to do so. Now, with your abilities, you help folks kind of work through that consternation, if you will, the same way that you were talking about the medium that you visited and the tarot readings that you got.
I think the thing that I've found, and you've probably found as well, is since COVID, everything's shifted radically. I know the way I work has shifted radically.
Mhm.
There were all sorts of things that I didn't believe were possible. The fact that we're having this conversation now, I'm not sure where you are at the minute, Zen. I'm in Somerset in England. I don't know where you are.
I'm in Chandler, Arizona.
Right, amazing.
Right,
So
right.
it's it's possible. Um, I didn't think a lot of what I do, especially the dowsing, I thought I had to physically be there. And one of the things that happened was I joined a networking group that had gone online during COVID. And one of the ladies there was doing healing on her, she works with horses, but she was doing an example on her little dog. And I sat there watching it, and the energy that came across from the screen was amazing. And
Hmm.
I thought, well, why do I think that I can't do what I'm doing?
Right. It's a
You
quantum
know,
field, right? It's all
yeah,
energy. And its operational capacity is based on where our attention, intention, and interactions take place. You know, even there's a, well, he was an physicist to begin with, Tom Campbell, and I'm sure you're familiar with his work. He now has done so many experiments to find the math that goes along with this, right? And he's what he calls virtual experiences as we are avatars, and it depends on where we put our attention as to what data stream we receive and interact with. So imagine if we've got a whole, 360 degree, how, we're like a horn, yeah, we're like a horned torus, right? With all the different dimensional possibilities as to what to experience in any given moment. And
Yeah.
it's just
And,
a matter of
and,
where we put our attention.
and the thing that's amazing, because I spent a lot of my college time around a lot of scientists. The amazing thing is that the maths exist that prove that there are multiple dimensions, not just another dimension. There are multiple ones, and
Right.
mathematically, it's all quite possible. And of course, it's very difficult to argue with maths because that's one of the,
Well,
the
what we
key links.
no, you can't argue with math. What and or direct experience. There was a gentleman in the 1950s that his name was William Swigart. He developed a process called the multi-plane awareness technique, and what that was a facilitated process. So you have a facilitator with a script basically, and he takes the
Mhm.
experiencer or she takes the experiencer through 9 planes. You create the light body, extend it, project your consciousness into it, and then it goes through 9 planes of consciousness, of which you have bodies on each plane that you integrate and look out through its eyes and then get whatever is necessary there for you. Now, this is a truncated process because you don't stay there long, and yet you can have a direct experience of that. I looked for an online version of it for a number of years and finally created one. As a multiplane awareness quantum field exercise. And then that was in the 50s. In 2010, uh, two a doctor and a physicist wrote a paper called the Triadic Dimensional Distinction Vortical Paradigm, and it was a theory of everything in which
Mhm.
they state mathematically that consciousness, space, and time are tethered across 9 dimensions. It doesn't eliminate more, neither does the multiplane. What it says is that this is our human bandwidth.
But yes, that's a good way of putting it. It's what we're capable of actually interacting with.
Right, right, which explains can explain anyway, all the different intradimensionals, ultradimensionals, extraterrestrials, and their ways of interacting with us because we already are on some level, we're just not aware of it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's good to be aware of those levels, and sometimes it's maybe not.
Yeah, it's really freaky when you have things happen because time is irrelevant. Uh, Things can happen in a nanosecond, right? And what they say, one place I finally found a reference to the speed of thought. And it was in the Urantia book, and it says it's 841 trillion miles per second. So
Wow.
think about a data download and how quick it can be disseminated and absorbed, yet not unfold within you because you can't unpack it. You don't have the ability to, right? Yet.
Wow. Yet, yes, yet. All sorts of things may be possible in the future.
Sure, and are. I mean, AI, for instance, we call it artificial intelligence. It's more aggregated because it's made up of all the human knowledge that exists. Then it has the ability of taking that and querying it. They call it the recursive function in computer language, right? And that's where a system queries itself for problem solving. Well, what do we do? We've got the exact same thing going on internally, right? We just haven't recognized. We always, first thing we do when we encounter a problem, we go inside, we ask a question. Why?
Which is usually not the best question to ask, apparently.
Exactly.
It's the what and the how usually are more productive.
Well, hopefully that's where it gets to, but because it's so most of the time it's like getting a cosmic two before and you wonder why you got it, right? Because it's like, oh man, why? Because it's that self-deprecating side of ourselves, of which those 70,000 thoughts a day that we have is mostly preoccupied with. It's those thoughts that elevate us, that move us into those new places, like you described. How would you describe moving into that, for lack of better, higher elevated place inside of you that's more congruent with your design?
I think what I try to do is set up my day at the beginning and
Hmm.
try and connect with the light within me and project that it's going to be a good day, or tell my brain, if you like, that today's going to be a good day. Because some days you wake up, you think, oh God, this is, I don't know. And then you go, well,
Yeah,
actually,
and how does your day go with that, right?
you can actually go, well, actually, I think today I'd like this to be a better day. I'd like this to be fun. I'd like this, I try to find something in the day that's going to be joyful, it's going to be fun, that's going to be relaxing, because there are all the other things that you kind of, I won't say you have to do, but if you're aiming to go in a certain direction, then there are things that align with that, that there are actions that you need to take. And we've all only got 24 hours in a day. But
Right.
I do think that making time, I mean, one of the things that I do try and encourage my clients to do is make time for fun, because a lot of people don't, if you don't write fun down in the diary, sometimes it doesn't happen
Yeah.
because there's too
Or if,
much
or
else
if you
going.
don't have time for fun, make what you're doing fun
Yeah.
somehow. I guarantee you can find a way. I do it all the time. I caretake my mother-in-law. She's 91-year-old Russian, doesn't speak any English with advanced frontal lobe dementia. And so, my wife has a real hard time because this is not mom anymore. And
Yes,
so
exactly.
I
Exactly.
stepped in out of my love for her and for her mother. And so I do most of the caretaking. Well, it's excruciating sometimes because you're dealing with someone that just is non-functional. And yet there's ways to have fun, instead of trying to wake her up to go to the bathroom. I'll come in and Dobre Utra, is good morning, and then I will tickle her toes a little bit, and she starts off with joy, which makes it much more
Great. Yeah.
manageable for me.
Well, of course. Yeah.
And so, and taking her to the bathroom and stuff, I'll sing, and just make noises and stuff just to be pleasant with her rather than have that, oh, I wish I could be doing something else going on in my head, right? Which disconnects you from the service that you can offer in that moment and the full experience of it, where you lose yourself.
It's the difference between duty and love, isn't it? If you're doing
Yes.
something, if you're doing something out of love, it's a completely different energy than doing
Yep.
it out of duty. I mean, duty's kind
Now,
of
it
like,
doesn't mean that it's not frustrating sometimes, right?
yeah, of course, of course.
However, it makes it less so because of the attitude you have for it.
Yes, and there must be moments when, although she has dementia, that she is in some way able to communicate with you, and you see that she's
Mhm.
actually, she's
Well,
actually there
there's the
for you.
tactile, right? The kinesthetic part of things where I don't understand Russian. I know a few phrases and things, so I understand her a little bit, but not near, when she just rips off a full sentence, I have no idea what she's saying if I don't
Which maybe
recognize
is
some of the words.
maybe that's really good. That may be the basis of a really positive relationship.
Right. Well, because my wife hears her sometimes and she goes like, she's just talking nonsense. It's just insane. And I go, well, good thing I don't understand it then.
Yeah,
I
because
just
you
do
don't.
what's
Yeah, you
necessary.
don't. Yeah. Oh, great.
It,
Well,
it's an act of love. You're right. And to be in that place, it could be different, right? There's always that possibility of, feeling disgruntled because you got to do something you don't want to do for somebody else that you don't really care about, right? And that to me is a family ethic um, I think is probably more present in America because instead of taking care of our elderly at home, we put them in institutions or homes or, whatever, and basically distance ourselves from their care.
And it's so varied. I mean, what we found in my family is that we had an aunt who was in the north of England and hadn't couldn't have been moved because of the law and various things I won't go into. She couldn't have been moved before, but what
Hmm.
happened was the nursing home made a terrible error. She broke her hip, she fell out of bed, didn't tell my sister who was guardian, and what happened was we then moved her. And the nursing home didn't say anything at all, which they couldn't. I mean, I wrote letters, nobody even acknowledged them. As soon as she was near my sister, it's a completely different story because my sister could go in very easily every other day, check
Hmm.
her out, make sure she was okay, you know, and
Sure. Well, if you got that proximity and that ability to do so, right? That's, my sister was the same way. My um, adopted mother was in dementia care for over a decade
that's a long
after my
time.
father passed. And yeah, it got to the point where, it's like dementia, Alzheimer's, um, they don't recognize you. They have no clue who you are. And yet there they are, right?
And it's really tough. I know one of my girlfriends took the decision. She looked after her mother for 14 years, and her mother had great what you call quality of life.
Hmm.
And my friend finally took the decision to put her in a nursing home when she no longer recognized her. And she said, well, look, she doesn't know whether it's me or anybody else that's looking after her. And,
Right.
I feel that this is now okay
Sure.
to do this. She
It
was
often
down.
makes you wonder about the possibilities for euthanasia too, right? I know that may sound cruel to some, but here's and my wife and I have talked about this, and I'm sure it's on others' minds too, is when you get to that place and your quality of life is zip. Um, what kind of experience can you have, and is it worth sticking around or knowing what we do now about what happens elsewhere once you leave the body? Maybe it's best that they do because they go into a much more pleasant environment that's supportive of them instead of, being stuck someplace where they can't really experience anything. That doesn't eliminate their ability to experience things inside themselves that we have no clue about, right? And maybe that's part of it too. Maybe there's some adjustments. Maybe you've got more experience as a medium than I. Maybe there's that liminal space that they're actually doing work that we're completely unaware of, and they are too, on a conscious level because they're inside something beyond our understanding.
It could easily be. There was a book, I can't remember the name of the doctor, but she had a stroke and was, I think, for 3 months, she was literally comatose. And everyone assumed that nothing was going on, and that she finally came out of the coma. And she said she'd been in a state of utter bliss for 3 months.
Mm,
So the thing is, you kind of don't really know
right.
what, what the experience is of anyone. I had a very interesting discussion, just actually, when was it? Yesterday, with um, a lady who was at the Communication Global meeting where we met. And what she was saying was that the one of the problems with the law around euthanasia, and certainly as she's seen it happen in the Netherlands, is that instead of it being limited to people who are at the end of their life or for whom there
Hmm.
is no hope, what happened there was all sorts of other groups said, we want the right as well. And it's now being offered to 18-year-olds who are, you know,
I've even
finding
heard
it
I've heard that
hard.
there's a movement wanting to make suicide okay. And
Just
not and frankly, we think they're deplorable choices, but to the person who wants to make it, who are we to get in the way? Uh,
Well, the thing is, it's also lack of information because there are a couple of things I know now which I didn't know when I was younger. One of the things I do know is it doesn't make any difference if you take your own life or not. You came to this planet to learn something, and you're
mhm.
coming back to do it, to finish it. So you might as
No
well,
matter what, no matter
you
when you
might as,
truncate your own experience, you'll be back.
yeah, you might as well get on with it the first time or the umpteenth time around, because I'm sure,
Right.
it depends whether you view all your lives as being, there are people who view all your lives as being happening at once and others who view them as sequential. I don't know which
Sure.
you favor.
Well, this kind of I taught high school for a number of years and came up with a holistic educational model. And the premise is there's five different relationships we have: body, mind, spirit, planet, cosmos, right? And those cover what you just said and we've been talking about. So how do we explore these? And it makes sense. The older we get, right, the more we understand, yes, these relationships exist and they are important. So you would think with our level of intelligence in the 21st century that we would begin to impart that earlier to others so that our progression as humanity can move faster toward this global unity that we know is inevitable.
We hope, I mean, there are a lot of views on this. One of them is this is a planet where people incarnate to learn. So
Hmm.
there will always be war, famine, poverty, disease. It's it's how much you hold that view or not. I also hold that
I'm not
that's
so sure.
possible.
I
I
think
hold that
anything is possible, right? It's just like it's like the ultimate goal that I believe we have is to love and be loved. That's what we need to learn. That allows us to build community in the appropriate ways, which then takes care of our people and planet in the process.
I think our planet is evolving as well. And I think
Hmm.
maybe at some point, the way things go, instead of, my understanding is as a species, we've blown ourselves up several times already. This is, it wouldn't
We've
be,
done something. I don't know if it's blown up or whatever, but there's
yeah,
definitely some prior civilizations that
the,
didn't last for whatever reason.
yeah. So, hopefully the whole planet can evolve to a point where we can get beyond the stage where we are now. I
Right.
think one of the
Well, and we
things,
can't be open to our neighbors in space until we do. Otherwise, we're going to be afraid of them.
well, I think one of the great things is if there was suddenly some sort of alien extraterrestrial contact that was recognized, I think it would do a great deal more to unite people on this planet, because instead of being warring among ourselves, we'd be going, oh, maybe we
Or
need
maybe
to.
we go, whew, help's finally arrived. Right.
I don't know whether I'm sure you have it in the States because they're American programs. Do you have Ancient Aliens in the States?
Yes, I know Giorgio
You know
personally.
him?
And
Oh,
I've been involved in the ufology field for over 30 years. Probably a third of my books are about my experiences with various races, I'll put it that way, um, and interactions that we're capable of having that we just aren't making ourselves available because of our belief systems.
and the question is also, do they want to communicate with us? I mean, that's the
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are, from my understanding, and I'd stake my life on this, there are no malevolent races other than humans. In order to achieve their level of technology, you have to have the consciousness to go along with that, which has no malevolence. It's just a vibratory rate that it's not present, right? It's not necessary because they've risen above it, right? We might call them all kinds of things because of that. And a lot of what their communication, this came through um, a guy named Wilbert Smith, who ran Canada's ufology program in the 1950s, similar to America's Blue Book, which you're familiar with. Um, and he had conversations with what he called people from elsewhere. And one of the basic things that they said to them is, we don't understand nothingness. And that's the foundation for their entire understanding of reality. And yet we do know from our own ancient texts that the idea of nothingness, like the recursive function too, now is you go into you dissolve into nothingness. Well, and from that nothingness is whatever things come, right? And we're told in scripture that, all of a sudden the burst of light, it came out of nothing. Well, what's nothingness, right? How is that? And it's not nothingness, it is unqualified energy that's available to all of us that has supreme intelligence. Or so my experience of it is. And this, I've been in both that nothingness space and in the light itself. And what I found, here's the paradox, right? It feels the same. Infinite intelligence connected to everything and individuated still.
And the same as nothingness.
Yes.
Wow. Wow, that's something else.
It's a point of perspective. I say point of perspective, point of perspective, right? It's that point of awareness. Castaneda talks about it in the teachings of Don Juan and what was imparted to him. We can move that assemblage point around. Tom Campbell says the same thing. It depends on where we focus our attention as to what data stream we're going to experience.
It's also holding the data stream. I
Mhm.
you know
Widening it,
yeah.
right? Stepping into it fully so that there's an immersion in it. And there's many worlds. We're even told that, right? In ancient scripture, right? There's many worlds. Well, why would they say that if
No,
we couldn't experience them?
no, it's what the limits are, and it's also how you. I think one of the challenges is there are a lot of people who've done a lot of psychedelic drugs and all sorts of things who are very aware of those other dimensions and other awarenesses. However, the thing is to be able to experience those without the
Right.
chemical
Yeah,
damage
yeah, yeah. You
those
can take
things
heaven by
actually.
storm, but you got to walk in the front door, right? Ultimately, you have to make the experience real without any other things. Yes, you can open doors, you can have the direct experience, the catalysts, right? Which are basically what they're for, is to give us that peek, right? To crack the door so that you can look in. You still have to open it yourself through your own disciplined practice to make it ultimately real. Otherwise, just temporary and transitory.
Yeah, and it's not stable either.
Right.
I do think one of the things that unfortunately a lot of the chemical pathways can do is destabilize people in their
Oh,
in
yeah. If they're not ready, they don't have the
their
awareness. They still have all their demons present that they haven't worked through. Those are the bad trips, right? Where you're addressing it because that's what happens. Everything that is incongruent in yourself is going to be presented to you in that experience.
oh
Or
yeah.
at least that's what I understand. Fortunately, I haven't had that much in the way, but I've experienced others. I've been around those who have, and man, um, I had a cousin that had ended up having 51 shock treatments after a bad trip, and it was horrible just to see him go through that and end up being somewhat of a vegetable afterwards.
Is
Um,
he all right now?
no, he's never fully recovered. And he was brilliant in high school. Um, but once that happened, it changed him. He just became docile.
Yeah, I think I, I wouldn't say electric shock treatments are the way to bring.
Oh, absolutely not. I was scared to death I was going to get him when they put, because that was the year prior that I spent time in the hospital. And I was not.
Because the thing that brings you down from that is vitamin B3. I don't know whether they use that now or not. I
Well,
don't
this
know
was in
what
the
the.
70s. Most of this, the chemistry and understanding of neurocircuitry and things like that, that there was no understanding of it. It was a DSM-4, diagnose and treat, right? Based on their behaviors and their whatever. There was no, well, let's dig further and see if we can understand really what's going on here. There was, oh, this is an aberrant behavior or dissociative behavior or whatever, and we need to fix it instead, right? Now it's a different approach because we know more. But back then, and from my experience, there were others like me who didn't have the advantage of being able to see and observe themselves and figure out their own way and got caught in the treatment programs and stuck. And they were having, hearing voices, seeing things, all the experiences of the clairals in some degree or another that in Midwestern territory in Bible Belt, Indiana, those
Oh
were
my
not
goodness.
acceptable.
No, certainly not in the Bible Belt, I can imagine.
Right. So, and yet we get through it. I was fortunate to have had some guidance early on and had, uh, I guess, my own tenacity of holding true to me and not allowing others to tell me how I thought and felt.
And I think you were probably lucky. It sounds like you had a really enlightened psychiatrist.
I did, and I also had good parents. Dad was a 32nd degree Mason, mom was a school teacher, and they both taught me, uh, they both encouraged me to be radically curious about things. Now that backfired on them as a teenager, right? But what could they do? And I'm sure it scared them to hear me talk to them about my experience because they didn't have it. They didn't know what to do. And so they followed the prescribed or prescriptive path, and you take them to the doctor, figure it out, and um, it's just part of what they knew that they thought was best for me.
At the time, yeah,
Yeah.
it would be. I mean, I know my mother didn't like doctors at all, and was sort of stay away from them at every possible opportunity. But what I found with my training is it's basically finding the right person to ask for help. If you found the right person for you, it makes a huge difference. I mean,
Right.
I
Well, that
do.
person will often show up when you're seeking, this is one thing about pushing and pulling energy. Um, if you're constantly seeking something, you're pushing it away ultimately. But when you intend to find it, different energy, right?
Oh yeah, very different.
Then it can show up and will because there's no um, energy that's keeping it from that. You've set your intent, you're being still, and you're allowing it to happen.
Yeah.
Uh, and guaranteed, I'm sure you've experienced the same thing, right? That's part of just how it works.
I will douse if I'm not sure who I need or what therapy I need to help me, then I'll douse it. And sometimes I get an answer that seems unlikely, but inevitably when I follow it, I even douse for the right person. If I get I mean, one example of this is recently I had a lot of back pain, and I've done work with a wonderful homeopath. And you would think homeopathy and back pain, you'd think it was something structural, this, that, and the other. But I dowsed for this lady previously, and I thought again, all right, I'll douse, I'll see what therapy do I need. And sure enough, it was the same lady. Within a day of taking her remedy, boom, everything was fine.
Hmm.
So it's, and you would think for back pain, is this logical? And no, it's not
Well, to
logical.
most people, doing the dowsing to find a person, that just doesn't compute, right?
If you,
And yet, it's all energy. You've asked for it, you're intending it, and you're just allowing that whole process to work, and you're paying attention to it and interacting with it appropriately rather than dismissing it.
yeah, and it, and it does. And I'm just thinking, it's like I remember years ago, one of the quotes somebody gave me was, you don't argue about the color of the fireman's hair. So it's not like someone's coming to help you. Do you care if they have curly hair, straight hair, black hair?
Right.
It's like this is the person, this is the fireman. So good. Here we go.
Sure. Now you've begun to broach how you've taken your gifts and moved them into a professional environment. Now, how did you find your way, or what evolved to bring you to the Feng Shui?
Again, that was something I didn't go looking for. I did. This was at the end of the 80s, early 90s, and I was trying to sell my house in southwest London, and I've been trying, trying, trying. It was difficult. There was a recession on, and eventually I got really nice buyers. Young couple were coming, and they were in a hurry. And I wouldn't do this now, but I went to myself, I don't think I can buy somewhere quickly. They wanted to move in like 6 weeks and 6, 8 weeks, something. And to me, that was fast. And I went, I don't think I can find somewhere. So I thought, well, I've just got to move out. And this was my thought. It doesn't matter where I go. I'll have the money in my bank account, all well and good. Let's just move out, not worry about it. Off we go. So my immediate thought is, what is logical? Right. Okay. My son was going to college, or he was due to go to college in North London. So I thought, right, so we find a flat in North London, we move on things there, and, further down the line, I'll buy somewhere else, right? So we moved, right? My life fell apart. It was unbelievable. I mean, I was a single mother for a lot of the time, so I was used to things going up and down and being difficult. So I'd had, I was working in London, I was working in Harley Street. I've been there a while. Suddenly, I had virtually no patients, so my income dried up. Right. My son, suddenly, all teenagers, you're a father, you're aware of this, all teenagers think they know everything, right?
Hmm.
So my son suddenly got that in spades, right?
Oh
So
boy.
it was like, my goodness, what is going on here? And I'd always been very clear about looking for partners who were available. I didn't want to get involved with married men or anything else. And suddenly there was nobody out there. I was doing the things I'd normally do to meet a potential partner, and nothing. And I had
So the
about,
universe was saying, all right, Suzanne, we're going to clear the slate for
yes,
you
it
in
was it
so
was
many ways.
it was like I went, I'd been there. This went on for 3 months, and I went, you know what? This is ridiculous. I've never seen anything like this before. And I'd heard about Feng Shui. I didn't actually know exactly what it was. And I
Right.
asked around. So I said, do you know anyone? Da, 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 da. Nothing. So then a flyer drops on my mat, and it goes, Feng Shui Day, East West Centre, London, da, 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 something Saturday,
Mhm.
something. I went, sign me up. Right.
Move your stuff, change your life.
So I went, okay. So I turn up. I didn't know what to expect, right? I wasn't particularly into macrobiotics at all. Um, and I did a macrobiotic experiment. And for someone with AB rhesus negative blood group, I have to tell you, macrobiotics are a disaster because
Yeah.
I need 3 times the amount of vitamin C most people need.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I turn up. Guy is teaching, people are coming up to him with their floor plans, and he's looking and going, you're experiencing X, Y, and Z. And they'd look back at him and they go, what? And I thought, okay, this guy knows his stuff. So I thought, right, I'm going to take all the notes I can possibly take, listen to everything. So I did, went home, looked at my notes, did everything. Everything changed in 3 weeks. And then I thought, wow, it's like the sun came out. This is wonderful. So then you think you know everything, right? Because I'd taken all the notes and this, that, and the other. I thought that was it, right? I didn't realize the depth of the subject. So I started doing other things. Things started going wrong again. I thought, no. I'm calling my teacher in. He can do it right. He came in. He broke half of his own rules with what he told me to do because I've been writing everything down and I was looking.
Right.
But of course, he knew what he was doing. And everything settled back down again. So I thought, right, okay. I was working with people in pain and who have physical problems, often have other problems. So I'd say to them, I wouldn't particularly explain to them. I'd say, look, draw me your floor plan. Why don't you try doing X, Y, Z? I was just basically saying, does it make any difference? Is it just me or is it other people as well?
Sure.
So
Yeah, let's experiment. Why not? Right.
let's just ask. And you know, they had no faith in what I was asking them to do. They didn't know anything about it, but they were getting results. So I thought, right, okay, so this stuff definitely does work. There's not, people ask me, do you have to believe in it? And the answer is actually no, because it's like electricity. If you turn the light switch on, I can't tell you how electricity works, but I know it's there.
Well, and there's a consciousness too. The fact that you connect with it to at least give it the opportunity to work. So you open yourself up to it and then it just does what it does. And it's your permission that makes a difference.
Yeah, you go, okay, shall we see whether this works? So that really got me hooked on it. So I got more and more into that
Hmm.
alongside what I was also doing as well. So it just kind of grew from there because I also didn't realize the connection between acupuncture and Feng Shui,
Right.
which I found out later. So it was like I was doing something that,
Layer upon layer, right? As we learn one thing, we see how it fits with other things, and it happens sooner or later.
yeah. And I would initially, when I first started doing it professionally, I would have days where I kind of go, this is all so ethereal. Everything I'm doing is invisible. Is this really real? And I would go to someone's home and they would tell me their story about what was going on. And I'd walk around and it was in the walls all around them. It was unbelievable. So I went, okay, yeah, it's all right.
Hmm.
There is a basis for this. There's a foundation for this. It's okay, right? Because people think that you're just doing things off the top of your head, and actually you're not. You're following
No.
you're following
Well,
a
after a
certain.
while, it may appear that way because you know it so well, right? There's a difference between ego and confidence. Confidence is knowing what you know, and ego is believing you know what you know and trying to push it on somebody else to get them to believe it too, right? Um, and there's a big difference in that and how it shows up, right? You've witnessed for yourself and for others the results of making these usually small changes, sometimes larger ones if the house is really in disarray, right?
It can be.
Yeah.
And it's also sometimes it's like when I'm helping people with moves, it's like when I move to where I'm living at the minute, I know about the difference that doing a move with the energy and against the energy actually is. And I
Hmm.
wanted to move, obviously, with the energy.
Sure.
The thing was, the universe didn't have it planned out that way.
Right.
I had surgery booked for my shoulder, and it was cancelled twice. Once because I had COVID, and the second time there was a nurses' strike. And it just happened. What I was thinking was, my God, I don't know where I'm going to be after I've had this surgery. Who am I going to be staying with? Am I going to be here, there, wherever? And what happened was the move was just about a month after the energies of the year had shifted. So instead of moving with the energy, I moved against it. So I had to use the stuff that I know about to actually ground myself in my new place. I hadn't planned it that way, but and sometimes you plan things and it just doesn't work out like that.
Yeah.
And
Or you plan things and the lesson is different than what you thought it was going to be.
yeah, and I have people that people will say to me they're doing, because often a move is not for 5 minutes. You're talking about a long-term move, and they'll say, well, I'd like to move with the energy, and sometimes it's just not possible. I mean, if you think of people in the military, working for big companies,
Hmm.
diplomatic corps, they're told you will go to
Right.
wherever.
Right. And you
Well,
have to
then,
adopt the attitude of everything is temporary and transitory.
yeah,
All you can do is be present and accountable wherever you are in the moment, and then deal with however it evolves from there, which you've got the tools to deal with, right? Or
yeah,
others may have them if you don't. So, how we're running close to time, and this has been
okay, that's
an
fine.
amazing conversation. It went into some really wonderful spaces and places that allowed you to share um, some things that others might not often hear, to more fully understand not just you, but the work that you do and energy and how that all works and how it may apply to them. So speaking of how it may apply to them, what kind of advice would you give to others that are kind of in a quandary still about their lives, their energy, their home environments? Granted, it gives new meaning to get your house in order, right?
Yes, yes. I think the first thing I'd say is that if you can, your home is your earth energy, and the more you can love what's in it, and the more you've got the sense of what's around you are things that you love, even if things aren't totally in order, if you're walking into that when you come through the door, it's great. There are some things that automatically raise the energy of a place. Flowers and plants are fifth dimensional energy. Flowers are fifth dimensional energy. That's always lovely to have around you.
Hmm.
Anything, if you actually, if you actually just clean where you live with the intention that you're clearing the vibes, opening the windows, letting the air in, letting the sunshine in. Just your intention will make a huge, huge difference. But I think the
Hmm.
main thing is to love what's around you and to care for it, even if it's only temporary, even if
Sure.
you're only here for 3 weeks, whatever.
Yeah, be grateful for what you have, love it, and you'll have more. If you have disdain toward it, then you're probably not going to get much more.
I think that a lot of that is true. And I think, if you can create this little haven for yourself, whatever else is going on, whatever other chaos is going on, if you can get a good night's sleep, come in through the door and go, yes, this feels lovely. I'm so glad I'm here. I'm so glad I'm home. That's that's the real energy. And to anyone moving, I would say, especially couples, the main thing is to walk into a place, look at each other and go, yes. And it doesn't matter what's going on in the house. That is the energy to move on.
Right.
That's
Very cool. Suzanne, this has been wonderful. I really appreciate your time and your being and the work that you do. And thank you so much for coming and sharing that with us. And I know it'll be of benefit to our audience too.
Thank you so much, then. Thank you so much for asking me. It's been a wonderful conversation for me too. I will have to explore more of your books and more of your work. It's not very often I
It's a
talk to
rabbit hole,
someone.
let me warn you.
Well, it's not very often I talk to someone else who is into ancient aliens and especially who knows Giorgio. That's wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. And it's my life. I'm just open about it. And again, I appreciate who you are and our future together. Who knows what that might be? And namaste and in lak'ech. And thanks for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. Again, please do like, subscribe, share, and visit planetarycitizens.net and download your free book. I guarantee you'll enjoy the read. And it's a short one. It'll take you maybe 2.5 hours. So thanks so much for being with us. And thank you for Suzanne Harper and myself. And I will see you next time.
Explore the thoughtless-sphere. Embark on a life-changing journey of self-discovery. Embrace harmony with self, with others, with Earth. One world in a new world. Zen Benefiel skillfully ignites conversations, guiding guests to reveal personal journeys and perspectives. Listeners are inspired to seek knowledge and find wisdom in their own lives. Join this transformative journey as we navigate the depth of human experience.